I spent 3 months constructing a furnace, melting more than 1,000 aluminum cans, and transforming them into a guitar neck, a guitar body, and ultimately a fully playable electric guitar. Here's how I did it. I've been collecting cans from barbecues, dinners, and camping trips for over a year, so it's safe to say that between my friends and I, we've been hard at work on this project for a long time. But before I can build a guitar out of these cans, I have to make a furnace to melt them in. So I took my buddy's old barrel smoker and chopped it in half to make the furnace body, then I lined the inside with some insulating kale wool. Stuck that onto a fire clay base, made a sketchy propane burner using metal pipe and a blow dryer, and then that gets inserted into the side of the furnace, sprayed the interior down with some refractory cement, and then welded up some tools to help with the whole process. It's roughly 1,000 cans. I didn't actually count them out, but it's 38 pounds of cans. I've made plenty of guitars out of weird materials, but this project required a pretty extensive amount of research to even attempt. Working with propane furnaces and molten metal that can get above 1800 degrees Fahrenheit can get really dangerous really fast, so I've taken safety precautions very seriously for this project. You'll notice that I roast the cans before adding them into the furnace. It's super important when melting cans that they're dry. Any little bit of moisture added into molten metal can explode, sort of like hot oil in water. I spent a good amount of time researching various tools and designing and building my tools off of them. For instance, my crucible, which is the gray pot that I'm melting the cans in, weighs around 12 pounds empty, and potentially 30 pounds when it's full of aluminum. So I wanted to make sure that I had tools that I could trust when lifting the crucible and placing it into the pouring device. When you melt cans, about half of the can melts into aluminum, while the other half oxidizes from the high heat and turns into slag, which is that metallic looking stuff floating on top. For the first pour, I didn't scoop off the slag, but for all the future pours, I did to ensure that I'm getting pure aluminum bars. Here's the first aluminum yield from the cans. Not a bad start, and everything went as planned, so I just gotta do that like 6 more times. I'm starting out this melt by throwing in this bar from the cans that I melted yesterday. It works a lot better if you have a little bit of molten aluminum to melt the cans in from the beginning. So here's what we've got, a number of these aluminum bars, each one weighing probably like 1 to 1.5 pounds depending on how much I filled each mold. In total there is 18.6 pounds of aluminum that I yielded from the cans, and that should be enough to make a guitar. This is the majority of that slag that I pulled off of those cans, and I could probably melt like another pound of aluminum out of it, but it's not worth the hassle. I started out by making the neck first, since it's going to require less aluminum. And in order to turn the aluminum into a neck, I've got to make a mold to pour it into. But before I can make that mold, I need to make a plug of the neck, which is basically an exact replica of what the neck is going to be turned into. For my mold, I'm using this stuff called Petrobond, and it's basically a really fine sand mixed with oil so that it sticks together and can hold its form in a mold. This white powder is just calcium carbonate that acts as a mold release so that the sand doesn't stick to the plug. Then it's just adding sand and packing it down so that it's compacted around the plug. These pieces of PVC that I'm adding are used as risers and a pour spout for the aluminum to go into. When aluminum cools, it shrinks, so the risers are supposed to feed molten aluminum into the mold to fill it in as the aluminum cools. These areas are where the risers feed into the mold, so I need to cut a little gate into the sand to allow the aluminum to flow into the mold. And then once I've got that done, it's just removing the plug to reveal the finished mold. This thing is ready to get poured. Fingers crossed this works out. Alright, here we have it, my first aluminum casting, and honestly it looks like it came out really well. I don't really see any shrinkage, so it looks like the risers did their job. I guess next up is just to get these risers cut off and get it cleaned up a bit. Because this neck is aluminum, I'm not able to use my normal table saw jig with the fret cutting blade. So what I resorted to was just manually marking the fret placement and then using a small hacksaw that I bought at Home Depot. And this hacksaw just happened to have the perfect curve size for the slots. I used a small piece of aluminum angle iron to ride the blade against so that I could cut the slot in the exact position. Also, because the neck is made of aluminum, there's no need for a truss rod. I just had to make sure I got the neck flat as possible prior to sanding the radius in. Fretting this neck was kind of a pain. It took a lot more force than a wooden fretboard in order to get the frets seated all the way. As you can see here, I had a few fret ends that were being stubborn, so I had to go back and hammer them in with a normal steel hammer. Now it's basically just replicating the same process I did for the neck, but this time for the body. I made the body super thin to reduce the weight and amount of aluminum I need to use. It's got a front control pocket like a Telecaster, and this is because I can only have cavities on one side of the mold with the way I'm making the mold. I also made the neck pocket slightly undersized so that I can file it down after to get a better fit for the neck.
Try to get past that sand down there. Alright.
Well, that didn't come out how it was supposed to. The cavities obviously didn't release from the mold, so I'm gonna dump it out and try something else. Alright, here's my workaround for the issue I had in the last one. Basically, it's just a mold that splits in half, so I can pack sand into it and then take that piece and place it in the mold. got the rest of the aluminum bars along with the risers from the neck that I cut off, and I'm gonna melt those down for the body. So I've got an aluminum body now, but it does have some issues. These cavities up here came out perfect, but this one obviously has a big hole in the bottom of it. It's also got a few other defects along the edge of the body up here. I think the mold is gonna require a riser right above the cavity just because it's such a thin area that the aluminum is cooling before it gets the chance to fill it in all the way. So anyway, I'm gonna chop this thing up and give it another go. For this one, I added a riser in between the two cavities to hopefully help fill that treble area. I also added one above the horn that had some voids in it on the previous tray. So this one has come out the best yet. Unfortunately, it's still got a small hole under the rear pickup cavity. I guess the riser did help, but not completely. And then there's just this one void on the top here, but I should be able to grind that out. I think it's good enough to use, plus my sand is pretty much toast at this point, so I couldn't even retry again if I wanted to. Oh. Broke the tap off inside the hole, so now I gotta drill it out and step up a size for the tap. Not the end of the world. I make mistakes in my shop all the time, and I try to make it a point to show it in my videos. My work isn't perfect, but it's all about adjusting and figuring out a way to fix the mistake, or just have some friends around that can help fix your mistakes for you, like my buddy did here by TIG welding the hole in the back closed. From this point on, it's just some finished work to bring out the shine, and then getting everything put together to bring it into a guitar. I know you guys are always very curious of the weight of my projects, and 12.3 pounds. What do we got? Honestly, not that bad. This was easily my most time-intensive project yet, and overall I'm really happy with how it turned out. When I initially thought of this idea, I didn't know whether or not it'd be possible, but after about 3 months of work, I can now say that it is indeed possible to build a guitar out of 1,000 aluminum cans. This thing, it's kind of like a smear machine. Anywhere you touch it, it's gonna leave a mark, but I guess that's what you have to expect with polished metal. I have a lot of thoughts on this guitar, and if you'd like to hear those, I uploaded a video to my second channel where I'll go more in depth on those thoughts. So if you'd like to check that out, there will be a link in the description to that video. Thanks for watching to this point in the video, and I'll get on to the demo now. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and as always, you can follow my work on Instagram at BurlesArt.